I walked through my front door after a family dinner and found my 8-year-old son Alex unconscious on the floor, his small body crumpled like a discarded doll. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely check for a pulse, my mind screaming that this couldn't be happening, not in my own home, not to my baby. When I demanded to know what happened, my brother Derek looked me straight in the eyes and said with absolute calm, "I just disciplined him. He was being disrespectful." My parents, standing behind him like enablers at a cult meeting, actually nodded in agreement. My mother said, "He deserved it, Kayla. Children need to learn respect." I was drowning in disbelief and terror as I dialed 911 with trembling fingers, kneeling beside my unconscious child. When the paramedic arrived and saw my brother, his entire demeanor changed. He leaned close to me and whispered 6 words that made my blood turn to ice. "Is that really your brother?" Because what he knew, what he'd seen before in another state under circumstances too similar to be coincidence, was about to shatter everything I thought I knew about my family. I'm Kayla, and this is the story of how I discovered my brother was a monster, how my parents protected him, and how I almost lost my child because I trusted the wrong people. Let me take you back to the beginning of that day, because you need to understand how normal everything seemed before my entire world collapsed. It was a Saturday in October, beautiful fall weather, and I'd reluctantly agreed to have dinner at my parents' house with my son Alex. I say reluctantly because family dinners with my parents and my older brother Derek always carried this undercurrent of tension that I could never quite put my finger on. Derek was 38, 6 years older than me, and had always been my parents' favorite. The golden child who could do no wrong despite a lifetime of behavior that ranged from controlling to outright cruel. He'd never married, never had kids, lived alone in a house my parents had helped him buy. He had this way of dominating every conversation, every room, every situation. I'd moved out at 18 and kept my distance from the family, building my own life as a single mother after my ex-husband left when Alex was 2. I worked as a nurse, raised my son on my own, and limited contact with my family to obligatory holidays and occasional dinners. But Alex loved his grandparents, and they did seem to genuinely care about him in their own limited way. So I'd make the effort, endure the subtle criticisms about my parenting, my career choices, my life, and then go home to our peaceful apartment. That Saturday, I dropped Alex off at my parents' house around 3 in the afternoon. I had to work a partial shift at the hospital, covering for a colleague, and my parents had offered to watch Alex. It seemed harmless. They were his grandparents. Derek would be there, but I figured with my parents present, what could go wrong? I should have trusted my instincts. I should have said no. I should have found other childcare. But hindsight is torture when you're replaying the moment you failed to protect your child. My shift ran longer than expected. A patient emergency kept me at the hospital until almost 8 p.m. I texted my mom that I was running late, and she responded that it was fine, they'd fed Alex dinner, and he was playing in the living room. By the time I pulled into my parents' driveway at 8:15, it was dark. The house lights were on, everything looked normal from the outside. I grabbed my bag and headed to the front door, already thinking about getting Alex home, getting him ready for bed, the normal routine of our normal life. I opened the door and my world stopped. Alex was on the floor just inside the entrance, lying on his side, completely still. His eyes were closed, his face was pale, and he wasn't moving. The scream that tore out of me didn't even sound human. I dropped everything and fell to my knees beside him, my nurse training kicking in even as my mother's heart was shattering. I checked for a pulse, found one, but it was weak. His breathing was shallow. There was a bruise forming on the side of his face and his arm was at an odd angle. What happened? I screamed, looking up to see my parents and Derek standing in the hallway, watching me with expressions that ranged from concern to something I couldn't quite identify. Derek stepped forward, his voice calm and measured. He was being mouthy and disrespectful. Wouldn't listen. I disciplined him. I stared at him, unable to process those words. You disciplined him? He's unconscious. What did you do to my son? He's fine, Derek said dismissively. He's being dramatic. I barely touched him. Barely touched him? He's not responsive. My hands were shaking as I gently touched Alex's face, trying to get him to wake up. Alex, baby, can you hear me? Alex. My mother spoke up then, her voice carrying that tone of reproach I'd heard my entire life. Kayla, you're overreacting. Derek was just trying to help. You let that boy run wild with no discipline. He was being disrespectful to your father, and Derek corrected him. Corrected him? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My child was unconscious on the floor and they were defending this? He needs an ambulance. Don't be ridiculous, my father said. You're a nurse. You can check him over. He probably just bumped his head and is being dramatic. You coddle that boy too much. I ignored them, pulling out my phone with shaking hands and dialing 911. As I gave the address and explained the situation, I heard Derek mutter behind me, unbelievable. Always so dramatic. That word. Dramatic. Like my son's unconscious body was a performance. Like my terror was an overreaction. The rage building inside me was volcanic, but I pushed it down, focusing on Alex, on keeping him stable, on willing him to be okay. The ambulance arrived in what felt like hours but was probably 7 minutes. 2 paramedics rushed in, a younger woman and an older man who immediately took charge. They knelt beside Alex, asking me rapid-fire questions. What happened? How long has he been unconscious? Any known medical conditions? Allergies? I answered as best I could, my voice breaking as I explained I'd just arrived to find him like this. I deliberately didn't mention Derek's discipline yet because something told me to wait, to let the professionals assess the situation first. The older paramedic, his name tag read Martinez, was examining Alex carefully. He noted the bruising, the arm position, checked pupil response, took vitals. His expression was serious, professional, but I saw something else flicker across his face when he glanced up at my family standing in the hallway. His eyes landed on Derek, and I saw recognition flash across his features. Not recognition like he knew Derek personally, but recognition of something else. Something that made his jaw tighten. They stabilized Alex, fitted him with a neck brace as a precaution, and prepared to transport him to the hospital. As they loaded him onto the stretcher, Martinez pulled me aside, away from my family. Ma'am, I need to ask you something, he said quietly, his eyes serious. Is that really your brother? The man standing over there? The question was so unexpected that I just blinked at him. Yes, why? He glanced back at Derek, then leaned closer to me, his voice barely above a whisper. Because I've seen this before. About 3 years ago, different state, similar situation. A child unconscious, family claims it was discipline, and there was a man who looked remarkably like your brother involved. Same build, same demeanor, same way of standing there calm while a child is hurt. My blood turned to ice. What are you saying? I'm saying you need to ask questions. Serious questions. That injury pattern on your son? That's not from a simple disciplinary action. That's from sustained force. And the way he's presenting, I'd bet money there's more going on than what you've been told. Are you saying my brother? I'm saying I can't prove anything right now, but my gut is screaming at me. I've been a paramedic for 20 years. I know what abuse looks like. And I know what happened in that other case, in Ohio. The man was never charged because the family covered for him, but the pattern was there. Multiple incidents, multiple children, always family members, always claimed as discipline. The world was tilting. You think my brother has done this before? I think you should ask why he has such easy access to children in your family. I think you should ask if there have been other incidents that were explained away. And I think you should not let your son be alone with him ever again. He glanced at his partner, who was securing Alex in the ambulance. We need to go. Are you riding with us? Yes. Yes, I'm coming. I turned to my parents, who were watching with concern. I'm going to the hospital with Alex. I'll call you when I know something. My mother stepped forward. We'll come with you. No. My voice was sharp, final. Stay here. I'll handle this. Derek moved toward me. Kayla, I'm sorry if I was too rough, but you have to understand, that boy needs. Stay away from me, I said, my voice shaking with rage I was barely containing. Stay away from my son. Don't call me. Don't come to the hospital. Don't come near us. His expression darkened. You're overreacting, just like always. This is why you can't control that kid. You're too emotional, too soft. Get away from me. I screamed, and the raw fury in my voice made him step back. You put my son in an ambulance and you're lecturing me about parenting? Get the hell away from me. I didn't wait for a response. I ran to the ambulance and climbed in beside Alex's stretcher, taking his small hand in mine as the doors closed. As we pulled away, I looked back to see my family standing in the doorway, my parents looking confused and upset, Derek standing behind them with an expression I couldn't read. At the hospital, Alex was rushed into the emergency room. Tests were run, X-rays, CT scan, blood work, neurological exams. I stood by helplessly as doctors and nurses worked on my baby, my mind spinning with what Martinez had told me. About an hour into our wait, a doctor came out to speak with me. Dr. Reeves, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a serious expression. Your son has a concussion, a fractured wrist, and extensive bruising to his torso and back. These injuries are consistent with being struck repeatedly and with significant force. I need to ask you directly, what happened to Alex? I told her everything. Finding him unconscious, Derek's admission that he'd disciplined him, my parents' support of Derek's actions. I also told her what the paramedic had said about suspecting Derek had done this before. Dr. Reeves' expression grew grimmer as I spoke. I'm required by law to report suspected child abuse. Based on these injuries and your account, I'm making that report now. The police will need to speak with you and with the individuals who were present. Do it, I said without hesitation. Report it. I want them investigated. I want to know if my brother has hurt other children. She nodded and left to make the calls. I sat in the waiting room, my hands shaking, my mind reeling. How had I missed this? Had there been signs? Had Derek hurt Alex before and I'd missed it? I pulled out my phone and started searching. Derek's name, Ohio, child abuse, anything that might connect to what Martinez had mentioned. I found nothing at first, but then I remembered Martinez said the family had covered it up, that no charges were filed. So I started searching differently. I looked up Derek's previous addresses, cross-referenced them with news stories about child injuries, unexplained accidents involving kids. It was a long shot, but I was desperate. And I found something. A brief news article from 4 years ago, different state, about a 7-year-old boy who'd been hospitalized with injuries the family claimed were from a fall. The family name was different, but the article mentioned the child had been visiting extended relatives. One line caught my attention: authorities investigated but no charges were filed due to insufficient evidence and family cooperation. I kept digging, finding 2 more similar incidents over the past decade. Different states, different families, but always the same pattern. A child injured, family claims accident or discipline, investigation happens but no charges filed. When the police arrived to take my statement, I showed them what I'd found. The detective, a woman named Sarah Chen, looked over the information with growing interest. This is helpful, she said. We'll look into this. I want you to know that we're taking this very seriously. Your son's injuries are severe, and the medical staff has documented everything thoroughly. What happens now? I asked, my voice breaking. We'll interview your parents and your brother. We'll investigate his background thoroughly. If there's a pattern here, we'll find it. In the meantime, I need to ask, is there any way your brother could try to contact your son or come near him? Not if I can help it, I said fiercely. He's not getting anywhere near Alex ever again. Good. Document everything. Every interaction with your family, every phone call, every text. If they try to minimize this or pressure you to drop it, that's evidence of a pattern of enabling. If you've ever had family members dismiss harm done to your child, if you've ever questioned whether you were overreacting to something that felt wrong, subscribe right now. Because what I'm about to tell you about fighting your own family to protect your child might save someone else from making the mistake of trusting the wrong people. Alex woke up around midnight, groggy and confused. The relief that flooded through me when he opened his eyes and recognized me was overwhelming. I cried, actually sobbed, holding his hand and telling him he was safe, that I was here, that everything would be okay. When he was more alert, the doctor and Detective Chin gently asked him what happened. What Alex told us made me physically ill. He said Uncle Derek had been teaching him a lesson because Alex had accidentally knocked over a glass of water at dinner. Derek had grabbed him, dragged him to another room away from my parents, and hit him repeatedly while telling him he was disrespectful and needed to learn his place. When Alex tried to get away, Derek had twisted his arm, which is when it broke. Alex said he'd tried to call for Grandma and Grandpa, but Derek covered his mouth and told him to shut up or it would get worse. The final blow had been to his head, Derek slamming him against a wall, which is when everything went black for Alex. He didn't remember anything after that until waking up in the hospital. My son, my baby, had been tortured by my brother while my parents were in the next room. The rage I felt was indescribable. It was pure, white-hot fury mixed with guilt and horror. Detective Chen asked Alex if Uncle Derek had ever done anything like this before. Alex hesitated, then quietly admitted that Uncle Derek had hurt him before, about 6 months ago, when I'd left Alex with my parents for an evening. Derek had grabbed him hard enough to leave bruises and threatened him not to tell me or it would be worse next time. 6 months. My brother had been abusing my son for 6 months, and I hadn't known. Alex had been too scared to tell me, and I'd missed the signs. The guilt was crushing, suffocating. But Detective Chen looked at me with understanding. This isn't your fault, she said firmly. Abusers are expert manipulators. They threaten children into silence, and they count on adults trusting family members. You didn't fail your son. Your brother and your parents failed him. Over the next few days, as Alex recovered in the hospital, the investigation expanded. Detective Chen called me with updates that grew progressively more horrifying. They'd found evidence that Derek had indeed been involved in at least 4 previous incidents in different states over the past 12 years. Each time, a child in the extended family had been injured, each time it was explained as discipline or an accident, each time the family closed ranks and protected Derek. They'd also discovered something else. Derek had been receiving money from my parents regularly, substantial amounts, for years. When questioned, my parents admitted they'd been supporting him financially because he had trouble keeping jobs due to personality conflicts. The personality conflicts, it turned out, were Derek's pattern of aggressive behavior toward coworkers and subordinates. He'd been fired multiple times for workplace intimidation and once for shoving a younger colleague. My parents had been enabling an abuser for decades. Funding him, protecting him, allowing him access to vulnerable children, and silencing anyone who questioned his behavior. When Detective Chen told me they were pressing charges against Derek for aggravated child abuse and assault, and investigating my parents for potential charges of child endangerment and failure to report, I felt a grim satisfaction. My phone had been ringing constantly. My mother called dozens of times, leaving voicemails that progressed from concerned to angry to desperate. My father sent texts demanding I drop the charges, claiming I was tearing the family apart. Derek himself sent threatening messages until I blocked his number and turned them over to the police. Extended family members I barely knew called to tell me I was overreacting, that Derek had just been trying to help with discipline, that I was destroying the family over an accident. Each call, each message, each attempt to minimize what Derek had done to my son, reinforced that I was making the right choice. These people cared more about protecting an abuser than about a child who'd been hurt. I documented everything, just like Detective Chen had instructed. Every call, every text, every voicemail. The evidence of a family system built around protecting Derek and silencing his victims. 1 week after the incident, my parents showed up at the hospital. Security stopped them from coming to Alex's room, but they waited in the lobby until I came down to confront them. My mother was crying, my father looked stern and angry. "Kayla, you need to stop this nonsense," he said. "Derek made a mistake. He's sorry. But you're taking this too far. Police? Charges? You're going to destroy him, destroy this family." "Destroy him?" My voice was shaking with fury. "He destroyed my son. He beat an 8-year-old child unconscious. And you, both of you. You stood there and defended him. You told me Alex deserved it." "We didn't know how bad it was," my mother pleaded. "We thought Derek had just been firm with him, we didn't know." "You didn't want to know," I shouted, causing people in the lobby to turn and stare. "I didn't care. You've been protecting him for years. How many other children, Mom? How many other kids has Derek hurt while you looked the other way and funded his lifestyle?" "That's not fair," my father said. "We didn't know about those other incidents. Because you didn't ask. Because you didn't want to know. Because admitting Derek is dangerous would mean admitting you raised a monster and spent decades enabling him." "He's your brother," my mother sobbed. "He's our son. You can't just destroy him like this." "He's an abuser," I said coldly. "And I absolutely can. I will do whatever it takes to protect my child and to make sure Derek never hurts another kid. If that destroys him, good. If it destroys this family, then this family deserved to be destroyed because it was built on protecting an abuser instead of protecting children. If you go through with this, you're not our daughter anymore," my father said, his voice hard. "We won't have a relationship with you. You'll be choosing the legal system over your family." I looked at these people, the ones who'd raised me, who were supposed to protect me and my child. And I felt nothing but contempt. "Then I guess you're not my parents anymore. Because I'm choosing my son. Every time. Without hesitation. And if you can't understand that, if you'd rather protect the man who beat your grandson unconscious than support the daughter trying to protect him, then we have nothing left to say to each other." I turned and walked away, leaving them standing in that lobby. I never looked back. The legal process was long and grueling. Derek was arrested and charged. He pleaded not guilty, claiming he'd barely touched Alex, that the injuries were exaggerated, that I was vindictive and had turned my son against him. But the evidence was overwhelming. Medical records, Alex's testimony, the previous incidents the police had uncovered, testimony from Martinez the paramedic about the Ohio case. Derek's defense crumbled under the weight of the truth. He was convicted of aggravated child abuse and assault. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. My parents were charged with child endangerment for their role in allowing the abuse to continue. They took a plea deal that included probation, mandatory parenting classes, and supervised visitation only if I agreed. I didn't agree. I cut them off completely. The extended family fractured. Some sided with my parents, believing I'd overreacted and destroyed the family. Others, after learning the full truth, reached out to apologize and express support. I kept my distance from all of them. The trust was broken. Alex went through therapy, intensive counseling to help him process the trauma. He had nightmares for months, startled easily, struggled with trust. But slowly, with professional help and my constant reassurance that he was safe now, he started healing. I went through therapy too. Processing my guilt, my anger, my grief for the family I'd lost, or rather, the family I'd thought I had that never really existed. The therapist helped me understand that I couldn't have known because Derek and my parents had created a system specifically designed to hide the abuse. That children often don't tell because abusers make them believe it's their fault or that telling will make things worse. That I wasn't a bad mother for missing the signs, I was a strong mother for believing my son and taking action when the truth came out. It took time to believe those things. The guilt lingered. But watching Alex gradually return to being a happy, playful child, seeing him smile and laugh again without that haunted look in his eyes, that helped. 2 years later, we've built a new life. Alex is thriving in school, has friends, plays soccer, loves science. He still has moments where the trauma surfaces, but they're getting fewer and farther between. He knows I believe him, protect him, and will always choose his safety over anything else. I built a chosen family from friends, colleagues, Alex's friends' parents, people who understand that family is about love and safety, not blood and obligation. We have holiday dinners with people who genuinely care about us. We have support systems that don't require us to minimize abuse or protect abusers. I haven't spoken to my parents in 2 years. They've tried to reach out a few times, always with the same message: they miss us, they want to reconcile, can't we just move past this? Never an apology. Never acknowledgement of the harm they caused. Never acceptance of responsibility for enabling Derek and allowing him to hurt Alex and those other children. So no. We can't move past it. There's nothing to move past to. They made their choice when they defended Derek instead of protecting their grandson. They're living with the consequences. Derek is in prison. I hope he stays there for the full 12 years. I hope he gets extensive therapy and recognizes what he is. But honestly, I don't care about his redemption. I care about the children he can't hurt while he's locked away. What I want anyone listening to understand is this: trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. If family members are minimizing concerning behavior, dismissing your worries, pressuring you to let things go, those are red flags. Your job isn't to keep the peace. Your job as a parent is to protect your child, even if it means fighting your own family, even if it means being called dramatic or overreactive or family destroying. Especially then. I was called all those things. I was accused of overreacting, of taking things too far, of choosing strangers in the legal system over family. And I did all those things proudly, because the alternative was allowing my son to continue being hurt. Don't let anyone guilt you into silence. Don't let family loyalty be used as a weapon to protect abusers. Don't sacrifice your child's safety to maintain relationships with people who enable harm. It will be hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Cutting off my parents, fighting them legally, standing alone against a family system designed to protect Derek. There were moments I almost broke, almost gave in to the pressure. But every time I looked at Alex, every time I remembered finding him unconscious on that floor, every time I heard his testimony about what Derek had done to him, I found the strength to keep fighting. And we won. Not just legally, though that mattered. We won the bigger battle. We escaped a toxic family system. We built a life based on safety and trust. We proved that survivors can heal and thrive. That paramedic, Martinez, probably saved my son's life by speaking up. He didn't have to pull me aside and share his suspicions. He could have just done his job and left. But he trusted his instincts and gave me information that led to uncovering years of abuse. I tracked him down months later to thank him. He told me that he'd always regretted not pushing harder in that Ohio case, that he'd seen the signs but the family convinced authorities everything was fine. He said that seeing Derek again, seeing another child hurt, he couldn't stay silent. His courage gave me courage. And I hope my story gives someone else courage. If you're reading this and something resonates, if you have concerns about a family member and others are telling you to let it go, please don't. Investigate. Ask questions. Trust your instincts. Protect your child. You might be called dramatic. You might lose relationships. You might face pressure and guilt and accusations. But your child's safety is worth all of that and more. My name is Kayla. I found my son unconscious after my brother abused him and my parents defended the abuse. I fought my entire family to protect my child, and I'd do it again without hesitation. Your child's safety is not negotiable. Don't let anyone make you believe otherwise.